Watch out! Did I scare you? I hope not. But going off our last conversation on the 3 things that you need to be asking your movers, it made me think, maybe we should talk a little bit about some of the scams to avoid. Now, I've got this microphone now. I'm testing this thing out, so hopefully you can hear me and I didn't just blow out your computer speakers when I just yelled that. But before we get into it, assuming your computer speakers are still working, we're going to talk about 3 scams to avoid, things that we hear about other horror stories from moving companies. Now, the first one are your items being held hostage on a truck. We've heard the stories where everything's loaded up onto the truck and they take it to the new house, and in order to get everything off the truck, they go ahead and start charging way more or something off the estimate, or maybe it's a couple of rogue movers that are demanding some money for themselves, saying, hey, I'm going to try to sell you, the ultimate packing supplies. If you throw us $100, we'll hook you up with some of the packing supplies, even if that stuff was already included in the quote. They might try to manipulate you or try to say something to make you think that there's some kind of an extra charge. Watch out for that. Make sure you have, again, everything in writing. Make sure you have all the charges in writing. If they try to make up some charge at the end of the move, and they're going to hold your stuff hostage on the truck before you can get it back. That's a big one. The next one is the bait and switch, where they'll advertise $49 an hour for 2 movers, $60 an hour for 2 movers in a truck. You see a lot of this on Craigslist, and just you might see signs taped to trees or whatever for some really cheap labor. Find out if those guys are even licensed, because if they're licensed, if they have insurance, if they actually have their own trucks, then they're going to have a little bit more overhead than to be able to charge $49 to $60 or whatever it is per hour. If it's significantly less than another moving company is charging, or what the reputable moving companies in your area are charging, if it's too good to be true, then it probably is. So be careful of that. If they say it's $60 an hour over the phone and they've got a great reputation, then they must have figured out something that the reputable companies haven't been able to figure out. Because if you have real overhead, and it sounds too cheap to be true, and you might think you're getting a good deal at the time, but it probably is too good to be true. The third scam to avoid is the fly-by-night mover who never shows up with your stuff. We see this more with long distance moves across the country. People are willing to pay a lot of money to have their stuff shipped across the country. I hear these horror stories a lot of times originating out of the Northeast, where the guys come, they load up all the stuff into a truck, all of a sudden disappears. You're not able to get a hold of the office anymore. The number was just a temporary number that they threw up to try and drum up some business. Maybe they had a fake website or something that they strung together. Maybe they were posing as another legitimate company. Make sure you're calling the right company when you're hired to do a move. There's certain companies out there that have very generic sounding names, and people might advertise maybe a certain amount of people and a vehicle, and people will call those companies thinking that it's a brand name company, and it's just a couple guys, putting together 5 guys in a van or something, and there's maybe a legitimate company called that somewhere else, and you realize pretty quickly that you don't get the company that you thought you hired. Be careful of that. Make sure you're on the real website, that you're talking to somebody from the organization, that you've looked up their reputation online. That, going back to my one other question, how do you find the best mover? What's the number 1 tip? Ask somebody. So companies with good reputations, the good companies, make sure you do a little bit of homework, a little bit of research to avoid getting ripped off. Thanks.